Okay, well, we'll jump in, and morning, Agatha. We'll jump in and we will get started. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. As I said before, if you have any questions at all as we go through this, feel free to Hello, can you all hear me again? I had a dropout there. I apologize for that. I suddenly lost all of internet connection. Thank you, I apologize. Right, let me jump straight over to sharing my screen. So, okie dokie, let me just remove a couple of things here and away we go. So as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the internet, can you all see my screen over here with the small business grant? It talks, let me just put my chat box back up again. And what we're going to go through today is talking about how my experiences of applying for small business grants. Now, this workshop, as I said, is brought to you by Business Station. And if you're not a member and haven't signed up to the amazing Digital Solutions Program, then I'll put a slide up at the end, which will give you details of how to sign up. So moving forwards, okay, so a little bit about me first. So I, obviously, as you can tell from my accent, wasn't born in Australia, but I've been here for 14 years and I've worked in marketing for over 30. I have absolutely, as I say there, a shed load of experience. I've worked in marketing agencies, I've worked in shopping centres, I have worked for the government in the UK where I was lucky enough to win an award for my innovation and creativity. So I have had lots of all-round experience, and I think when you're get to join this scheme, if you get to speak with me, you'll find out that I can kind of work out with most businesses what they should be doing and where they should be focused. As a result of what I've done, I've had quite a bit of experience at actually working with people to obtain grants. So I haven't actually applied for those grants on their behalf because you're not usually allowed to, but I've sat beside them. And I always liken applying for a grant as a bit like applying for your favorite concert tickets. You have to get everything ready so that when those grants come up, you are ready to apply online. So that's what today's about, is making sure that you are totally ready to actually apply. And so you can get straight away onto the system. And there are lots of different ways, and we'll go into that. So tips for success. So there's millions of dollars in grants eligible for businesses every single year. And successful grant applications are backed by detailed research and solid preparation. So you need to make sure you can dedicate enough time and resources to the task, and there's no magic formula, it's just about some basic principles. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to look at how you find grant funding. We're going to look at how you prepare, make sure you've got everything ready. We're going to look at the application process. We're going to cover then about building a strong application and what's involved. And I've got some example sheets here as well that I'm happy to share with people afterwards that are just simple checklists and things if you'd like a copy. And then sometimes it's not in all cases, but obviously diversity is really important in the grant application process, and we will touch on that later on. And then most importantly, your supporting documents. And I can't tell you how many times I've come across people that have got everything ready and then on the day realize that they don't have a signed stat deck that you need to get in advance, and you can't just do that easily. You have to go and find the JP, etc. So let's jump in. So these are the places where you can get funding. Now you've got you can see there for yourself on the screen, the Australian Business Licence and Information Service. You can use that to find industry specific grants and funding programs. The Queensland Government Grants Finder, that's a really neat tool for finding available grants and assistance programs. And then you've got the Australian Grants Program, which has grants and programs tools to find Australian state and territory government grants. And then you've got Grant Connect, which is basically for all current grant opportunities. And then you've got the specific coronavirus. And if you were to pop in, and as I said, I can give you these sheets afterwards. And if you were to copy any of those links into your URL and search, you'll be able to find them. And they're always worth signing up. You have newsletters that you can sign up for with them. That means that you're easily able to they send you through regular newsletters when their latest grants are out, which is always obviously handy to know. Trying to keep on top of all of those different grant places can be hard. So I would always suggest doing that, signing up to the newsletters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. So the journey here is that we've got to look at eligibility. So when you're looking at eligibility, we always have to check thoroughly through an application pack. Now, I've got an example application pack here of a small, this is the Business Basics Grants Round 1 application pack that I helped someone apply for with the grants. They all look different, they all have different information, but they all kind of cover the same. I mean, obviously, the more money you're applying for, the rules change, but majority of the information that you need to prepare is similar. So always read through. I really encourage you to take your application. They always come out a couple of weeks in advance. You have plenty of time to prepare for them. So make yourself familiar with everything in there. And then look at any, so then you've got to look at the selection criteria. Now the selection criteria, that's tailored information specific to that particular grant. So without going into too much detail, it might be a digital grant, for example, and so you must spend that money and you must, with selection criteria, have so many staff that work for you. You must earn under a certain amount. For example, under 300,000 was on the Small Business Basic Grants first round. You may have to spend the money within a certain amount of time. There's no usually about that. You always have to spend it within a certain amount of time. So know your processes, really understand your guidelines, and then look at the application and get prepared. So we're going to have a look at all of this in a bit more detail. With the application process, I want to kind of get through step by step and just see and make sure that when you're applying for a grant that you don't see it as a panicky thing. Because if you can be prepared way in advance, then you're ready on the day. And it's literally, I have got, when I do it, I have a sheet up on one screen if I can, if you have two screens. If you don't, and still have your Word document up with all of your answers to all of the possible questions they may ask you. And then it's just a question of you can copy and paste it into the grant application. The proposal, so the purpose, the expected outcomes, the measures, they're probably going to want you to put a bit of a scope of practice in there, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. And then some supporting docs, what you submit when you do this, which, as I said earlier, we touched on having a JP sign a stat deck for you. You might need some financials, etc. So when you go through the process, I want to just cover off on these tips with you. So I think some of these are fairly obvious, but I think if we just kind of cover off and make sure that it is obvious for you, I want you to keep your application logical and easy to read. Don't overcomplicate it. Remember who you're writing to. You're writing to an auditor that's going to be approving thousands of these, and they want to see quick, short, logical answers. So keep your content easily understood, apply consistent formatting. So make sure headings, subheadings, bullet points, font size, a bit like if you were putting in a school assignment, I suppose. Make sure your lines, your spacing, etc., is all put together logically and is easy for them to read, because the easier you make it for them, the more likely you are to succeed with your application. I want you to include keywords from the guidelines and assessment criteria. And keywords are just words that you would use. Imagine when you're searching for something on the internet. I'm sure most of you have come across this by now. If we were searching for a television now on the internet, we possibly would be searching for the latest Sony television, the latest smart TV, those kind of things. So whatever the keywords are that pertain to this particular grant that you're applying for, make sure that you use them throughout, and have a look, go through the documents before and highlight them so you've got them written down, because they're the ones they're going to look for. And remember, at the end of the day, a lot of this, or all of this, is submitted online, and so it will go through a computer program first, and the computer program is going to look for those keywords. So if you haven't included them, you're probably not likely to succeed. Always write factually and avoid using words like hope, could, might. They're a bit sort of airy-fairy. You want to be, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do with this money. This is how I'm going to spend it. And this is what it's going to do for my business. Write your answers, unique answers to all questions. And some of the questions may sound similar, but they're not similar. They're just trying to get a different perspective on it. So remember, you're writing somebody that doesn't really know much about your business and doesn't have the time to learn much about their business. So it's all got to come across quite simply. Be bold and positive, don't exaggerate, and demonstrate your project's likelihood of success. So outline some of the key drivers of risk and uncertainty and how you will manage them. You know, you can't always guarantee. The beauty of digital is that you can measure everything that you do. Identify the range of product outcomes that may be achieved based on best worst case scenarios. So if, for example, desired project outcome, satisfactory outcome, or a poor outcome, and any potential risks involved in any of that. And provide a short assessment of the likelihood of the above scenarios. Provide project budget details. They always want to know your budget. And then I always suggest you include, if you've got any any words in there that might need a bit more of an explanation, put a glossary in at the end so that you can explain unfamiliar words or acronyms. You've got to basically guide your reader. That's what you're doing. Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going to use it. This is why I need it. And this is how I'm going to use it to the best of my ability. That's why you should invest in me. Is this making sense to everybody so far? Somebody just like to give me a yes on the chat line and just check I haven't sent you all to sleep just yet? Great, thank you. Eligibility. So these are just some of the things that they will ask you. This is not, please don't ever take this as gospel. They're not going to necessarily ask you, oh, this might not happen in exactly the same way as this, but these are just some examples of things that they might have as under the eligibility criteria. So they may want you to confirm at the time of writing for the grant that you have fewer than 20 employees. That's quite a common one with small business grants. Obviously, you have to have an active ABN, and they might be specific. So with a recent round of grant applications, they were not allowing the Gold Coast region to apply. You were allowed to be regional, but obviously they didn't count the Gold Coast as regional, so that didn't apply. Is registered for GST. And again, you have to weigh up the opportunity for this, because are you going to register for GST, which has more tax implications for you because you've got to then do your tax in a different way? Is it worth it? Yeah, GST is over the 75K. So if you're not registered for GST, it's not on all of them. not on every single one. But if you, and I've had people that have actually registered for GST in order to make sure that they can get the grant funding. So you've kind of got to weigh up, is it worth it? I mean, if it's a 10K grant and your accountant says, well, yes, we'll do your tax in a different way, then I would speak to them first before applying for this grant. So this is why you have to read the eligibility really thoroughly before you start. They'll often ask if you have like a state office, in our case, Queensland, anticipated turnover, in this case, it was 300,000 or less, and that the owners directors have never been insolvent. So as I said, give yourself a really good look through, make sure that you've got everything ready for eligibility and that you are eligible to apply. You don't want to be applying for something you can't achieve. They're going to want to know about the applicant, so that your business name, your ABN, your street and postal address, all those kind of details. I don't really need to go into that. If your industry and sector info there, you can get on the ANZSIC website. And does your business identify as working in tourism is often a question that comes up. How many years trading, and then going into describing your products and services that your business provides. Financial details. So they're going to ask you to get your accountant or yourself to prepare some financial details. So with expected turnover, that's your gross turnover, actual plus estimated to be earned by the business at the conclusion of the current financial year. That's what they're looking for there. And with your expected gross profit, they're looking at your turnover less the cost of any goods or services. And as I said earlier on that one, actually just going back to that one, they quite often put a limit. So you have to be, you have to be earning under X amount in order to apply for this particular grant. Sometimes with grants as well, I might add that they will only give you, so with, for example, the 5 and the 10K grants, they'll say that they'll just give you the whole grant and you have to spend over that amount, but you don't have to go massively over it. So for example, with the 5K website grant, you could claim the whole 5,000. You had to have invoices for quotes, etc., from businesses that were saying that it was going to cost 5,000, say 500. So it only had to go over by 500, but it did have to go over. In other cases, they might say to you that they're going to fund you 10,000, but you have to spend 20,000. So they're only funding half of what you're doing, and you have to prove that you spent that at the end. Remember, everything has to be measurable, and you've got to keep that in mind the whole way through. One thing really important, or another thing I think is really important, is building a strong case for what you're doing. So with you want to give yourself the best chance of success, and to present a convincing business case, you need to describe a few things. So you need to describe your business and its activities, your project idea and how it aligns with the objects of the grant. So obviously, if it's a digital grant, then you've got to make sure that you're spending it in a digital way. What activities and outputs your project will deliver, why your project needs funding. So, and I'm going to show you some examples of these, and why it represents value for money. So how is that 5,000 going to fund the building of your website, and why is that representing value for money for your business? How will you successfully bring the project to completion? The benefits of your project to your business, and include the long-term, broader regional and community benefits. So it could be creation of jobs, preservation of existing jobs. COVID is a classic of this, that quite a few businesses may have started at the beginning of COVID, so they haven't had the opportunities that they may have had with outside of COVID. And that means that they can perhaps ask for some help to just get their marketing up and going, because they haven't had the usual being out in the community type of marketing that they would normally be able to do. So how is your project likely to stick out from everybody else? Sorry, I jumped a page. How's your project likely to stick out from those? And how will you successfully bring the project to completion? And the benefits of your project. Include and explain the involvement of any third parties. So if you've got any financial advisors, business coaches, accountants in your business, and specifically address why their involvement is significant. I want you to demonstrate that you've sought expert advice where relevant and applied those learnings where necessary. So again, this can come with just getting advice from, if you're going to be doing, I keep using the example of a digital, because a lot of the grants are digital at the moment, COVID funded, but it could be for staff, etc. Could be for new equipment. You just got to demonstrate that you've sought the expert advice, that you are getting the right kind of equipment for your business or the services, and that it's going to do what you need it to do, because you're going to have to kind of prove it does at the end. And we can talk about ways you can prove it. So there will be application rules. They usually want you to start the grant funding activity in less than 1 month. They want it funded and completely over within a certain period of time. Now, in this case, the small business grants one was to be over within 4 months. And then you've got to agree to deliver it as per the agreement. I think that's probably a fairly obvious one, to be honest. But how do you measure those results? Well, there's lots of ways that you can measure. So if you're going to put in, for example, that you're going to, with your website, in fact, actually, we'll come on to that in a moment, and I'll show you how you can put that in your application rules and then how you actually do measure it. So here's an example of a description of a scope of works, and I would always get one of these written. Now, they do say they want about 200 words quite often. That one I think is 120 roughly. If you, and you can see that one, the example that I'm using here is a version of one that succeeded in a grant application. So these guys here, they launched their business just prior to COVID, and I have a feel free to read the screen. But it basically involves the redesign of a website. And when they launched the business, they had 0 clients and very little funding for marketing. They reached the point when they needed to plan for the next 12 to 24 months, and they needed to upgrade the website. And by adding in new content, it meant that they were able to target new clients and grow their business. What they're saying here is that the upgraded site would enable us to show the wide range of services, which they do. So they could add in more content, enabling more SEO, search engine optimization, and they could automate some of the initial contact processes. So they could look at like a CRM program. The upgraded sales tool, the website, will increase business and increase the turnover, which in turn could result in new employment. So there they've covered off on what they're doing. Now, the actual activities that we're going to do was a new website design, with 2 to 3 designs based on their branding. They were having new photography done that would complement the new brand. They were producing new 2,500 words of new content that had keyword specific information in it. And they were updating their cPanel, which is the WordPress site, the builder that they were using to build their website, and incorporating new designs in there. So they basically they gave me, when I gave them a quote for this website, they gave me what they needed to do, and so I made sure that their quote matched exactly what they needed to do and had descriptions in there to assist with what they needed. Again, their keywords were mentioned in the quote. When we went through the actual timeline of it, we said that the website was going to be launched within 4 months of receiving the approval letter. Of course, that matched in with what the deliverables were of the actual grant. And then we said that we'd be able to measure the success through Google Analytics, which of course is built into every page of the website and is something that you can easily track. We said we would also measure the inquiries as we answer calls, so we can ask them, you know, how they heard of the business. So if they did phone us and didn't come directly through the website, we could still say, oh, they saw our website, and so on. So if you were building your social media profile, you could use your insights on social media. If you were running a Google Ads campaign, you could measure it by your results on Google Ads, and you can track with that by codes that get put along the way as to how successful it's being. Oops, sorry, went too far. So this is one of the other questions that they asked in this particular application. So how will it enhance your core skills and competitiveness? So, and they again wanted describe it under 200 words. Now this is only 98, but again, it won a grant. So I think you don't have to be, but if, you know, as long as it makes sense and everything in there is relevant, then write as much as you need up to the 200 words. Every business is going to be different. I won't read through all of this again for you, but it does, you know, it talks about the expected outcomes over the next 6 months. Be original. Don't put anything unrealistic in there, because that will really weaken the strength of your application. So please be careful what you say. Be realistic, be truthful and as accurate as you possibly can, because you may have to provide evidence. And they're going to look at evidence in the case of revenue increases, gross profit increases, staff increases, and you're going to have to prove that. Having said that, it's an easy thing to prove, so I don't want to kind of freak anybody out with this. So as we said there, you know, that's what the kind of things they're going to look for. They're going to look for a revenue increase, they're going to look for a gross profit increase, and they're going to look for an employee increase, because that's what we said when we put the application in. So much else to add there. And then this is an example of assisting growth. So business revenue, profits and jobs. So a new website, critical to helping a modern business grow. Views, leads, subscribers, opportunities and sales will all come from a well-designed website. We will convert visitors to our website into leads. You can see the picture here, what we've painted, how it's going to help. We'll also link reviews from our business from Google, showing how credible we are, and include testimonials. As our business scales up, opportunities for additional staff will arise. That's as simple as it has to be. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Remember, as I said at the start, these people are reading lots of these at the time. And so it's important to keep it short, sharp and simple. Now, we said about diversity. So here, this is an example of the types of reducing barriers for vulnerable Australians that they're looking for. So women in business, people with disability, young people in business, seniors in business, culturally and linguistically diverse. So the government's committed to funding appropriate services that recognise and embrace diversity. So the Access and Equity Policy asks providers to reduce barriers for vulnerable Australians and make sure that diversity is not a barrier for people engaging with government funded services. So you're going to have to sort of make sure when you read through the application, if there's any way that you could add one of these areas into your application. I think it always shows that you have really listened to the scope of what they want from you, but also maybe even if it's not listed in the scope, that you've actually thought outside the box and actually added it in yourself. So because you know they're looking for it. So even if they haven't mentioned it, why don't you go that step further and actually suggest that we're employing young people and taking them through apprenticeships, that we have more seniors in business. Seniors are amazing. I worked in shopping centres for 14 years, as I said earlier, and I always used to try and employ seniors because they were much more approachable. So I used to watch when we used to bring in sort of younger staff compared to the seniors, and the seniors would get a much better relationship going with anybody that they were chatting to. So supporting documentation. So these are the things that you're going to need. So we're going to have a look at what you're going to do. So get prepared with this. You're going to need your suppliers' details, all of them, their ABN, their contact details. You want the details of the grant funded activity, check through your formal quotes, make sure it will ask you for at least one, sometimes two, maybe more. So read that. I would always suggest putting in a couple of quotes just to show how variable they can be, but always make sure, read that if it's a 5K grant, that the quote is over the 5K. And you don't have to go, so obviously you're not trying to get them to add money onto it. What I'm talking about is saying that don't feel you have to come inside the 5K. You don't, you have to go over it. So when you're going out for grants, if your website comes into $4,000 and you're applying for a $5,000 grant, then why don't you add in some extra things that you could do on your website that would take you to over the 5,000, but actually would enhance what you're actually trying to achieve. So that's what I mean by that. And then you need a statutory declaration signed. Now you can print a stat dec off. You can just Google that and print the stat dec off, and you can head along to your local shopping centre, police station, wherever, and go and get your stat declaration signed. Don't leave that till the day you're doing it. And the reason I'm giggling is because I had that happen to me twice. So the people I was working with had it all ready to do their paperwork, were ready to sign in, get going, and I said we were checking through their paperwork, we had it all ready down here, and they didn't have their stat dec signed. They'd got the stat dec, they just hadn't got it signed. No, we have to input that, we have to upload everything, and it has to go with the application. So you need to get prepared. You're going to send this off. You're going to, when you've done everything, you're going to check that everything is, whoops, I'm going to go here. So this is my point. Check before submitting. You're going to hit a submit button. Before you do, take a couple of minutes to go over. Now it is depending on the competitiveness of the actual grant. For example, when I did the small business basics grants, this one here, the first round, they went within 3 hours. In fact, I think they crashed the system. So I was literally ready with my client at the time. We sat there and we were ready with everything armed. We knew roughly, because when you go onto the site, it's telling you roughly what it's going to answer you, and hopefully after today you can be totally prepared. But it's going to give you a rough idea, and it's going to give you an example application as well. So if you've got all of that prepared, you've gone through, you've added it all in, just go back and check that you did put it all in the right place. Maybe have someone sit with you if you can, and then just quickly check and then submit. Now, once you submit, you'll get an email receipt. And if you don't, just check your junk folder. And if you still don't have one, then check with the Department of Small Business Employment and Training, or whoever you need to be checking with for that particular grant, so that you're making sure that you have actually gone into the system. Because as I said, it's a bit like if you've ever applied for concert tickets and you're sitting there thinking, did I get them? Oh, I don't know, it came through. Oh, was I first? It is like that. And so you have to keep trying and trying and trying. Don't give up. You might not get in on your first occasion, but you should, if you're quick enough and prepared, you should get in. Okay, a couple of other things as well, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a grant application checklist, and it quite often comes with the grant. It will look something like this. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's just got a little checklist down it that just asks you, for example, on this one, I've read all documents and know the aim of the grant program. I've checked my idea. Its proposal is strong and aligns with the aims of the grant. I'm concise, answer concise and within the required word count. So it's checking with you that you've done it as we've talked about today. Budget, you've outlined your budget. You might have to get something, if I didn't mention earlier, you might have to get something from your tax accountant. I think I did say that. That you've used the same keywords in your grant guidelines and assessment criteria. So again, as I said, get your keywords prepared for the particular grant. Your formatting, you've proofread it. It says here, these are the guidelines from the government, that you have 2 or more people proofread your information. And I said, if you've got it ready in a Word document, you're just copying and pasting it, so you're not really typing it in. And final check that you've got all your documents to go with it. So that's usually available with the grant, and you can print those off. Now, you can also Google information about grant applications too, and it will tell you you know, what makes a good grant application. There's lots of sites you can go on there. This is one that's done from experience. I can tell you, as I said, that this actually achieved a grant. So hopefully that will help you. So we've got a bit of a quiz here. Let's start. A business has to have fewer than how many employees in this particular grant? Who's the quick one that's going to text me the answer to that one? Oh, well done, Ian. Hey. And grant funded activity was to start within how many months? No. Yes, Russ. Ian, it has to start within 1. It has to finish within 4, but it has to start within 1. And that's just on this one, as I said, that's just basics of this one. So, final one, you can get a stat deck signed by a what? Or a who? Yay! And please, as I said, make sure you do it before the day. Okay, has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask me? I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and go back. Are there any questions from anybody? If there's anything you want after today, then, oh, actually, I will continue sharing my screen for a second, because I literally have on here this sheet that I wanted to put up, which was, so sorry, go back to this one, about the program that you can have 7 hours of personalized business mentorship for only $44. So you'll get to spend 3 hours one-to-one, and then you do a range of workshops and webinars like this, so to just enhance your skills. And you can just take a screenshot of that if you're not a member. So I'll leave that up for you to just take through for a second. So chat, do we have any? Yes, Gordon, I am so sorry. I did not see your question and answer. Yes, I can speak to you afterwards. I'll just make a note and we can go through that. And this is recorded, so you can watch the recorded version after the event, Gordon. I'm just making a note of your name. So yes, anybody that wants to refer to this, it will be put onto the Business Station YouTube channel, and you can watch that at your own leisure and hopefully go back. And I wish you all luck if you're actually going to be applying for grants. Any other questions from anybody? Great. Well, I wish you all luck, and we'll take it from there. Have a great day, everybody. It was lovely to meet you all. You're welcome. Bye. Bye. Thanks, everybody.